Good morning. Today we are going to be looking at the poem Charge of the Light Brigade, and the key word, the key vocab that you're going to need for that today is the word glorify. So glorify is a verb, so it's a doing word, and the definition of the verb is to praise something or someone as being wonderful and great, often when it is not actually honourable or deserving of respect. Okay, so when you glorify something, it's making it out to be wonderful when it's not. So we've got two examples here. Example 1, we can see how horrible war is, so why do we glorify it and claim that fighting is impressive and heroic? And example 2, in the poem, the soldiers are glorified as heroes. This is a conflicting belief, as some people argue that soldiers are killers and therefore should not be celebrated. So what's the key question today? It's how does Tennyson present the soldiers in the charge of the Light Brigade? So in the chat box, let's see if you grasp this word. True or false? Glorifies means to praise something or someone as great because they have worked hard. So is that true or false? Put your answer in the chat box. It was false. Praise something or someone as glorious often when it is not actually honourable or deserving of respect. So in the chat box, write a sentence of your own that uses the word glorify. Use the image of the military tent to help you, and it may be worth thinking back to the examples that I gave you at the start of the lesson. Okay, so Alfred Lord Tennyson is the author of this poem, and he lived in the 1800s, 1809 to 1892. He lived and wrote in the Victorian era, so this is the era of A Christmas Carol. So that was 1837 to 1901. He was the Poet Laureate in 1850, and this position meant that he wrote poetry to commemorate important events that took place in the British Empire. So Simon Armitage and Caroline Duffy, who are both poets that we've studied, have both been Poet Laureates for Britain as well. One of the key events that Alfred Tennyson wrote about was the Crimean War, and that occurred between 1853 and 1856. Britain and Russia fought one another in the Crimean War. So we've looked at that before through the poem Checking Out My History, and we learnt about Florence Nightingale and Mary Seacole, who were both nurses during that war. So this was the first real media war, and what that meant was it was reported back via the news into Britain, and Britain learnt of the triumphs and the failures in quite a lot of detail. One of the most famous events of that war is the Battle of Balaclava, and it took place in 1854 and was a military disaster for Britain, so a year into the war. So let's see whether you know the answers to these. So true or false? Number 1, the poet's name was Alfred Lord Tennyson. 2, he wrote poetry to celebrate events in the United States. 3, the Crimean War was fought in the 19th century. Or 4, the war was not reported in the media. So in the chat box, you can write just the letters TTFT or FTFT, whatever you think the answers are. Go. Okay, the true statements were the poet's name was Alfred Lord Tennyson and the Crimean War was fought in the 19th century. The false statements, he wrote poetry to celebrate events in the United States, because obviously it was the United Kingdom, and the war was not reported in the media. It indeed was. It was the first real media war. Reports of victories and losses were sent back to Britain. So what was the Battle of Balaclava? 600 British cavalrymen, soldiers on horses, of the Light Brigade were given a mistaken order to charge down to a valley heavily defended by the Russians. So 600 soldiers on horseback were given the wrong order to basically go to their deaths. So they were just going to be slaughtered. They suffered a terrible defeat, losing 110 men with 130 more wounded, and it caused widespread shock when it was reported back in Britain. So the poem, The Charge of the Light Brigade, was written by Tennyson, and to Tennyson, the war seemed necessary and just. He was actually all for it, and the poem became a celebration of the heroic soldiers in the Light Brigade who fell in service to the commander and their cause. So he celebrated the fact that these men went into a situation knowing they would be killed. So the poem glorifies war and courage, even in cases of complete inefficiency and waste. So even though there was no need for these men to die, Tennyson glorified that event. If you go to the assignments tab, you will be able to have a go at answering the questions below in full sentences. The questions are on that assignment. Go there now. You've got 7 minutes. Okay, did you get these right? Number 1, Tennyson was writing in the Victorian era. 2, the conflict was called the Crimean War. 3, the Light Brigade were defeated at the Battle of Balaclava. 4, the poem glorifies war and courage. 5, 600 cavalrymen, soldiers on horses, charged into the valley during the Battle of Balaclava. Okay, so I'm going to put the link to the poem into the chat, and I want you to head to YouTube and watch the video. I expect you back here in 4 minutes. Okay, so let's have a quick summary of the poem. So in stanza 1, Tennyson describes the soldiers' charge and the initial order that was cried, "Forward the Light Brigade." Stanza 2, not a single soldier was discouraged by the command to charge forward, even though the soldiers realised that their commander had made a terrible mistake. 3, the 600 soldiers were assaulted by the shots and shells of cannons in front of them and on both sides of them. Still, they rode courageously forward towards their death. 4, the soldiers struck their enemy gunners with their sword, sabres bare. When they turned back, they had lost many men. 5, cannons continued to fire at them. As the brigade rode back from the mouth of hell, soldiers and horses collapsed. Few remained to make the journey back. 6, the world marvel at the courage of the soldiers. Indeed, their glory is undying. The poem urges its readers to honour these noble 600 men who remain worthy of it. So what you're going to do today is you're going to have a go at answering this question. You're going to write one paragraph, that's all, and it's effectively a what, how, why paragraph. So I'd like you to write one paragraph on the following task using at least 2 references references to words or phrases from the poem. So the question is, summarise how Tennyson presents the soldiers in the charge of the Light Brigade. So you're looking at how does Tennyson present the soldiers? So answer, how does he present them? Use a quote to back it up. Identify the language techniques and comment on the effect of that. So you might wish to include what actions the soldiers take, how Tennyson emphasises different aspects of the battle, and what Tennyson encourages his reader to think and feel. And there are some little hints there that might help you to glorify the quote, "the mouth of hell," and 600 men. So let's have a look at some key quotes that might help you here. So someone had blundered. So the soldiers obey and accept their orders even though someone had made a mistake. So if you look at the word blundered, that's a verb. That's a language technique you might look at. It means mistake. Another quote, "Plunge into the battery smoke right through the line they broke. The soldiers have successfully charged against the enemy line. They are praised as strong, courageous and skilled." So again, you've got another verb, plunged. We've got this interesting description of battery smoke right through the line they broke, which makes them sound quite strong. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon behind them. This repetition communicates the relentlessness of the charge and of the dangers they face by the brigade. And this last rhetorical question, when can their glory fade? Their glory should not fade, as their sacrifice is symbolic of all those who sacrifice their lives for their country. So this is an example of what you might want to be writing. So summarise how Tennyson presents the soldiers in charge of the Light Brigade. So following the instruction of the commander, the brigade of 600 men charged towards the enemy line. They are gallant and brave. So that's the what. Yeah, Tennyson presents them as gallant and brave. Tennyson depicts the cannons volleying as they thunder across the valley. The scene appears chaotic and the soldiers' risk of death is emphasised in the line, mouth of hell. Okay, so we've got two judicious quotations there. We've got the how. However, the soldiers, those who died and those who survived, are commended, praised for their bravery as they charge through the Russians and Cossacks. Tennyson honours their noble actions and glorifies their fighting. So the answer there is why. Why does Tennyson do that? Because he wants to honour their noble actions and glorify their fighting. So you need to go to the assignments tab and you'll see that question with some sentence starters on today's assignment. Off you go.